Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I want to talk about how to review demos, and mainly when I'm talking about this subject, I want to give you 6 useful areas that I like to focus on when I review someone's demo, and I also do this when I review my own demos. I think it really helps me focus in on things that need to be fixed, and I also want to talk about the mindset you need when you watch demos, so you're not overcritical of your own play and don't hurt yourself by trying to get better. So let's get the ball rolling with the mindset you need when you watch yourself play. And that mindset is being humble and not being overcritical of your own gameplay. You want to be humble because you're obviously not a god at Counter-Strike because you're watching your own demos to improve. And going hand in hand with that, you also don't want to be overcritical because you aren't a god at Counter-Strike and you're going to make mistakes. And some of these mistakes are just unavoidable. You can't always make the right decisions and you can't always make the right plays in a game, but you're going to watch your demos and analyze them so that you make less bad decisions and you make more good decisions and you understand the reasoning behind these good decisions. That's the goal of reviewing your demos. You want to be able to look at your gameplay and pick it apart and say, these are the circumstances that led me to make this decision, so I want to be able to make more good decisions and avoid the bad decisions that lost my team rounds or got me killed. So on the subject of kills, I also want to talk about reviewing demos and ignoring rounds that you got kills on. Just because you got kills in a round doesn't mean you don't have to analyze it and look for mistakes that could have A, made the kills easier, or B, you can still get kills and still lose rounds. On CT side, this is especially common. You could push and get 2 kills but then die, and you can still lose the round and it can still be your fault. Because playing too aggressive is something that plagues the community and it needs to be fixed as well. You don't have to push for kills, and getting a single kill and falling back does way more good than trying to push for a kill. I would rather someone get 1 kill and fall back than get a kill and then 50% of the time get another kill. Getting 2 kills at the beginning of the round and dying isn't as good as getting 1 kill and falling back to live. If you're constantly pushing for frags on CT side and dying, you're a liability to your team. So you need to focus on forging a playstyle that holds up under pressure and never puts your team at risk. You need to be a rock that your teammates can rely on all the time. So now that we've talked about more of the mental side, that's being not overcritical, being humble, looking at good and bad decision making whilst focusing on the good, and we've also talked about playing too aggressive and how that's bad for your team, and so that even when you get kills, you still need to look at those rounds. I want to talk about the 6 categories I break down all my demos into when I review them, so I can be more specific and focus on the areas that need the most work in my gameplay. And those categories are overextension, overpeaking, utility usage, aim and movement, and decision making. And so when I'm reviewing demos, I like to make myself a little scorecard, and every time I make a mistake in one of these categories, I like to give myself a point so I know when I'm done I can go back and focus on the areas that I did the worst in, and hopefully next time I watch myself play, I won't have as many check marks in that one box. So let's break down these 6 categories and start it off by going in depth on what overextension is. And overextension is simply pushing for more kills after getting an opening. It's really simple to diagnose, and once you are aware of it, it's pretty easy to fix. Overextending and pushing for kills is never a good idea. It makes your team weaker and loses rounds all the time. Now I also want to point out that this is something very common on T side as well, and usually people who are on T side will shrug this off as getting entry frags or trying to make a play or getting an opening on a bomb site, when often they do it without proper team play and they lose rounds and put themselves at unnecessary risk. Now this is a category that you really need to be aware of when you're playing less skilled players, because a lot of the times you'll be pushing for kills because you know that you can get them. When if you do this when you're practicing, you're likely to do it when you're actually playing seriously, and this can be damaging to your gameplay. So the second category is overpeaking, and I like to think of overpeaking as just a scaled back version of overextension. When you overpeak, you expose yourself to multiple angles at a time by swinging too wide or getting caught in the middle of nowhere. Overpeaking makes it really easy for you to get shot from an angle you weren't watching or to be instantly traded by the other team. Now pay attention for this mostly on the CT side where this does the most damage. Give yourself a point whenever this happens so you know that you can go back and fix it later. But don't be too critical of this category because sometimes it's just unavoidable, so try your best to force 1v1s. Also give yourself a point for when you peek when it's not necessary. You may do a quick jiggle peek from formation, but keep in mind that you don't always need to be repeaking an enemy. One of the best things you can do in a round is to stay alive without baiting in order to be a thorn in the other team's side and help your teammates get kills because they are distracted. Now onto the third category, which is utility usage. And this is one that I'm always really critical on when I watch someone play, because it's something so simple that so many people don't get right. And by just spending time using grenades and using flashbangs and using smokes and learning how to use them properly, you can make yourself such a better player, and it's not that difficult to learn. So there are multiple parts of utility usage where I like to give myself check marks for making bad plays. And the first one is dying with grenades left over. If you find yourself dying with unused flashes or smokes, especially on CT side when holding a bomb site, you get a point or a check mark in your box. And there's 3 crucial parts of a round when you should be using your utility, and that's CT side waiting. You need to be using your smokes to delay a rush, flashes to help teammates make an information peak, things of that nature. On CT side, you also need to have your grenades for stopping a rush. You can have Molotovs to delay an enemy even more, make them run through the molly. You have a smoke grenade, you can put it down so they have to run through the smoke. You can throw counter flashes and things like that. Now, the third area you need to be using your grenades is if you're taking a bomb site or if you're retaking a bomb site. And this is pretty obvious. Throw some well-placed nades that don't impair your teammates. Team flashes are a big check mark. If you keep team flashing your teammates, that's not a good thing. Use mollies to force people out of positions, and use smokes to block off parts of the bomb site or limit angles so you're not being peeked from multiple areas at once. And the second area you're going to lose points on is in the effectiveness of your grenades. Using GoTV X-Ray, you should be seeing how effective your grenades are in doing their jobs. Flashes are pretty simple. There's a great tool called CSGO Demos Manager that I download and use to analyze demos. And there's a flashbang page where it tells you how effective your flash grenades are. And you can see in this demo here that I was pretty good because a flashbang usually blinds enemies for 5 to 6 seconds. So I was right in that 5-second mark. You can also be looking that you're not throwing flashes where there are no enemies. Throwing a flashbang through a smoke when no one's pushing or just because you want to throw a flashbang is a waste of a flashbang. Smokes are pretty easy. Just don't double smoke an area. Don't throw a smoke. There's no reason to. Mollies, now these are something that I see people will buy because they see pros buying them and they think I should buy a molly, but then they don't use it right. You should be using a molly for a retake or to stop a rush. I see people who are in like mid dust 2, for example, and they throw a molly with a minute left on the clock in middle when no one's made a play or no one's even pushing. That's a complete waste of $600 because the team can just not run through it. It's not like they're executing or anything, so be mindful of that. HE grenades are pretty obvious. Throw them at the enemy. If you find yourself always chucking them through smokes and no one's on the other side of the smoke, rethink how you're using a molly. Maybe save it for an execute or save it for a take on T side where you're nading over the bomb site. For example, cache A site. You're in A main, you throw the molly over the site, over the red box, and you nade some people playing on the site. And lastly, another important thing with grenades is how exposed you are when you're throwing them. You need to be able to quickly pull out the nade you want. Don't ever use scroll wheel. Bind each grenade to each key of the keyboard. For example, I use Z, X, C, and V to pull out my grenades. That's flashes, HEs, smokes, and mollies. And so when you quickly pull these out, you want to pull them out, step, throw it, and step back in. You don't ever want to be out in the open with a grenade in your hand. So the fourth category is aim and movement. And I chose to add movement to this category because I think there are 2 types of moving in CSGO. There's the kind of movement where you just want to get around the map. And then there's the movements that you make when you're aiming, which are all the more important because aim isn't only about using the mouse. It's also about how the mouse and the keyboard are in sync with each other. And without both of those, you aren't going to be a competent aimer who can compete with people on a high level. So every time you're watching a demo and you whiff easy shots, make spastic mouse movements that are not under control, or have poor crosshair placement, give yourself a check mark. More specifically, it's important to diagnose particular aspects of your aim that are causing you trouble. Find times in demos where you're aiming and examine them. You can even find instances of this in demos. Just record yourself playing deathmatch and then watch it back in slow motion. So I like to slow my clips down using host_timescale 0.3 and then watch myself aim. If your first few shots are inaccurate, you need to look at your counter strafing and timing because you aren't counter strafing soon enough or you're shooting too fast. Another area to look at is how your flick shots look. If you start trying to one-tap someone before your crosshair has even reached its destination, you need to slow yourself down. Also be sure to note the general area of your aim. If you're constantly aiming for the lower chest or the crotch at the beginning of all your sprays, you need to mentally reset yourself and start aiming for a more head height level. So the fifth category is movement, and movement is kind of a special one because that's something that can only be developed with time and practice. You need to work on being more fluid with your movements across the map, not getting stuck on objects, and also a really important one, and I actually made a video on this called Learn the Maps, is you never want to be peeking an angle or getting caught engaging with someone while you're holding the W key. You need to work on making jiggles to the right or to the left, so that you come out in an arc and you're only using your left and right key. If you ever get caught holding your W key, it's incredibly hard to counter strafe and quickly adjust and make the shot. So the sixth and final category is just decision making. And I like to think of this category as kind of like a summation of everything else in the game. But I like to think of this as more of the broad picture. You need to look at decisions that were made and determine whether they're good or they're bad decisions. And also, something that's really important is to look at decisions that you could have made that could have made the rounds easier, could have made your kills easier, or could have made it so you lost less teammates during a round. Because sometimes we only look at bad decisions. You also need to look at good decisions, why you made them, how you can make more of them, and also think about decisions that you just didn't make or plays you could have made or situations you could have taken advantage of. So those are the 6 categories that I like to grade all my demos on in a nutshell, basically. You want to use this so that when you're done looking at a demo, you can easily pick out the areas that you did the worst in, and those are the areas that you need to improve first to make yourself a better player. So whenever I review a demo, I like to write out these 6 categories, and next to each one, I'll give myself a check mark if I make a mistake. So at the end, I just tally up the check marks, whichever has the most, I did the worst in. So finally, I want to wrap up this video with talking about watching professionals play and watching professional demos. First of all, I and most of the people I know have never sat down and watched a professional play. And I think there's multiple good reasons for this. First off would be watching professionals on Twitch. When you watch people like Shroud or Roka or Hiko play on Twitch, I really don't think you get a grasp for how the game should really be played. Because if you think about it, they're just glorified Smurfs. If a global elite were to go play with silvers, you'd call him smurfing. A professional player playing with people in ESEA is basically him smurfing. So he's playing against people who don't have anywhere near their level of aim or their game sense, so they can just stomp on them. They'll make decisions that you should never make in a real gameplay. The other thing to look at, even when you're watching demos of real matches, is that decisions they make aren't always right. Just because a player is really good doesn't mean they're making the right decisions, and those decisions that work might not work for you because you don't have the same level of aim as them, so you might not be able to pull off the same crazy ass shit. Something good you can do though is sit down and watch a demo and think about the decisions they made as a team and as a player. And you should make a game of it and say, when you see someone do something, you want to look at the circumstances that led to them making a decision. And if you can look at that circumstance and say, I would do the same thing, you're on the right track. And you need to see maybe they don't even make the right play. And you'll get good enough at reading the situation, understanding what the right play is, that you can correct pro player demos and see decisions that they made that were actually bad, that hurt their team. So these are kind of things that you can keep in mind when you're watching pros play. So that about wraps up everything I have to say on demos. Thank you for watching, guys. Remember to dislike if you didn't like it at all, like if you liked it, comment below with anything in general. I'm always happy to read those and always happy to reply. You can follow me on Twitter at LO3TV, and remember to subscribe for any future content. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a good one.